Everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is our third lesson on favor. So this is part 2 of the lesson, Who Does God Favor? Going through another series, Who Does God Favor? So how many of you believe that God is your source?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
That God is your supplier of your needs, your provider? So if God is your source, then what does it mean when you complain about a raise?
That's the flesh talking.
Or it's like, who should you complain to? Your employer or your source?
The source.
So it's just food for thought. So we'll read 2 Chronicles 1, 10 through 12. This is Solomon talking. He says, "Give me now wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people. For who can rule this people of yours?" God said to Solomon, "Because you had this mind and did not ask for riches, wealth, or honor, or the life of those who hate you, nor have you even asked for long life, but you've asked for yourself wisdom and knowledge, that you may rule my people and over whom I have made you king. Wisdom and knowledge have been granted to you, and I will give you riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings who were ever before you has possessed, nor those who will come after you." So Solomon was the richest king ever. He was the wisest king ever. So he received riches, wealth, and honor greater than any king in the history of the world,
Because he didn't ask for them?
because he asked for wisdom. Yeah, he didn't ask for them. He wasn't at God as to guide God's people. So Solomon had favor. So that is why did he get favor? So it wasn't because he had faith. It wasn't because he was the most righteous king ever. It wasn't because he spoke a word. It was because of the one request. And the request wasn't for favor. And he didn't ask for riches and prosperity. But that's what he got.
He just asked for wisdom, you said?
Yeah.
Wisdom and knowledge.
And knowledge.
Wisdom and knowledge to reach God's people. So he never prayed for riches. He wasn't believing that on God to make him prosper. He didn't sow a seed in some ministry or get a prayer rag. He didn't speak it and claim it. He didn't have a preacher lay hands on him. So another thing we know that is sometimes our prayers don't get answered, or God won't answer if he's already given us an answer. So if we're asking him something he's already answered, he won't give us an answer. So, for example, we don't have to ask God, if your neighbor's getting on your nerve, you don't pray to God and say, "Should I kill them?" Because he already told us, "Thou shalt not kill." He already told us, "Love your neighbor." So if you're praying, "Should I kill him, God? Should I kill him?" You may not get an answer because it's clearly told you in the word. So we don't need to ask God about things that he's clearly instructed us about in the word. And that's one of the reasons we may get unanswered prayer. So one of the things he has clearly instructed us about is favor. So we're going to analyze and examine the systems that God has put in place for favor from a biblical perspective and the specific instructions in the Bible. So this is the second lesson on Who Does God Favor. So I'll review, last month we did part 1, Who Does God Favor. So I'll review that. And it's on the website if you want to see it. So a quick review of that lesson. The favor of God can be described as tangible evidence that a person has approval of the Lord. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone who's prosperous or healthy has favor from God. And it doesn't mean that everyone who has favor is necessarily walking perfectly or correctly with God in every area of their life. Favor gives you God's attention. And we looked at 7 things that bring you favor. So we looked at Bible verses that talk about 7 different things that bring you favor. The first one was righteousness. So being righteous, being in good moral standing, following the law, brings you favor of God. It says God surrounds the righteous with a shield. The second thing was seeking good. So wanting good things to happen to people that you don't know. It should be evidenced through your thoughts, concerns, and actions. So are you happy when good things happen to other people, even when those same things don't happen to you? So seeking good brings you favor. Number 3 is knowing God's ways. Do you want to know God's character and understand God? Or do you just want to know about the things that benefit you? Do you care about God as a person? Number 4 was humility. Not viewing yourself as too high. So humility references a state of feeling lowness, especially as compared to God. So humbling yourself, being humble, is number 4. Number 5 is fearing God. So fearing God meaning respecting God. Do you revere God and His Word as holy? Do you respect God as the final authority? Number 6 is love and kindness. So having an attitude, a behavior of loving kindness. So it was described as mutual outward help, forgiveness of offenses, sympathy of feeling, which leads to interchange of thought. And this is the only trait that we looked at that not only promises favor of God, but it promises favor from God and man. Loving kindness, number 6. And number 7 is marriage. So God says He favors marriage. And we discussed the fact that He also gives many warnings about the outcomes of marrying the wrong person. For example, a Christian we looked at. So those are the seven things we looked at last week. It's bringing favor. And so any questions about that last month?
Did you go over like why does God favor? Did you say that? Or
Why does He give you favor?
What's the intention of favor?
Oh.
Did we go over that?
We didn't go over why. I mean, those were why He gives you favor, but it wasn't in the sense of like what was He thinking, or like why does He feel that's a good thing.
Okay, but that's pretty similar to what you just.
So
okay.
these favors are kind of a reward for
an
action that He's in favor of.
Okay.
Yeah. And so today we'll look at part 2. Who does God favor? And we know that a measure of favor comes to everyone. It says the sun shines on the righteous and the wicked. So good things at some points in time happen to everybody, whether God favors you or not. Some good things are going to happen to people. And we know bad things are going to happen to people, whether God favors you or not. But we know that some have more favor than others. Favor means to, from the dictionary, give approval, support, or liking for someone or something. To provide with advantages, to show special privileges. We see that your thoughts, action, and behavior can determine your favor, can impact your favor. So it's not only God, it's about you as well. So we looked at those 7 reasons, and so I've found 3 more now. So we have 10. So the next one we'll look at is wisdom, which is Solomon had, doing good deeds, and then other people, which we'll cover in the next lesson. So other people, the favor of other people could bring you favor from just being around them. So that'd be interesting, but that'll be next week. It didn't fit. So this week, we'll start with wisdom. So Proverbs 8:34-36. says, blessed are those who listen to me. So this is wisdom speaking. So wisdom is speaking here in Proverbs. Proverbs is the book of wisdom. It says, blessed are those who listen to me. So those who listen to wisdom. Watching daily at my doors, waiting at my doorway. For those who find me find life and receive favor from the Lord. But those who fail to find me harm themselves. All who hate me love death. So those who find wisdom find life. Those who find wisdom find favor from God. So which is kind of a double thing. You get wisdom and then you get favor because you got wisdom. A double benefit. If you don't find wisdom, you're harming yourself. And if you hate wisdom, you love death. So what do we call people that hate wisdom? Fools. Yes. Bless you.
Bless you. Those who find wisdom find favor.
Yes.
Right. You know how it says that when you find wisdom, you find life? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That just makes sense because, like, if you're seeking for God's wisdom, He gives you wisdom when making decisions. And, like, when you don't seek God, you make awful decisions in your life. It's kind of, you know, it's a lot is based on our decisions and not rushing to go with how we feel. But, like, when you stop and ask God, like, He gives you wisdom, and He's always says the best way. Right? And what's better for you, you know.
Mm-hmm. So wisdom is the application of knowledge.
Mm.
So a fool might have knowledge, but he doesn't know how to apply the knowledge.
Mm.
So wisdom is based on the ability to see differences. So being able to notice differences between things is what wisdom is based on. So the difference in an opportunity, the difference in right and wrong, the difference in a moment, the difference in an attitude. And then once you recognize the difference, wisdom is responding correctly to that difference. So noticing the difference and then being able to correctly respond to it is wisdom. So an example would be everyone, who does stocks, they know it says, okay, buy low, sell high, buy low, sell high. But then when most people start to invest in stocks, if they buy a stock and then all of a sudden it drops, most people, they sell. They'll sell, they'll sell it now, it's low. But it's like, well, so buy low, sell high is the wisdom everybody knows. And then if you have a stock and then all of a sudden it starts going up, then most people will say, hey, well, it's been going up. I don't want to sell it because it might keep going up. But it's like, if you buy it low and sell it high, and most people when they're beginning investors, when it goes down, it's like you can't buy it low because all your money is already in. All your money for stocks. That's the difference between amateurs and professionals. Is professionals always have money to invest. Amateurs are always 100% invested. So it's like when it goes low, they don't have any money to invest, so they sell. But anyway, that's a different lesson. That's different.
I think it takes a lot of wisdom to make a decision, right? Because you just mentioned that it's being able to know the difference.
Right.
And, I think that's where the challenge comes from is how do I know what the differences are?
Right.
What am I being challenged with? And that's in everything, right? Decisions on whether to move,
Right.
to stay, right? What's going to be best for me financially, right?
Difference between the
spend
job.
this money, right? Or should
Yeah.
I save it for the next opportunity, right? Or an emergency or something like that. And I think we go through those challenges daily. And that prayer of wisdom is really where you kind of got to surrender and say, I need you to help me with this decision.
Yeah, everything. So it's like, oh, well, there's a sale. Should I buy it now? Wisdom, or should I take this job? They say it's more money or more this. It's like, but the difference you can say, well, but it also means you got to wake up an hour earlier. It also means you got to work, weekends now. So it's noticing, recognizing the differences is part of wisdom. So being able to discern what's the difference between this decision and that decision? And that's not always
the
easy.
idea of taking the time to really weigh everything out, right? To look at all the options.
Yeah.
Right.
So the time, and then being able to properly. So sometimes it's like no matter how much time you took, you wouldn't have thought of this other piece of the puzzle.
Right.
So that's what wisdom is noticing the difference between
all the differences
between the right person and this person. Know the difference, so it's all the decisions.
I feel like peace has something to do with it. I feel like it's
Peace.
there along, because I think with wisdom, right, when you're trying to make a decision, and both of them could look great, right? But I feel like a lot of the time when I feel like it's God, I feel a sense of peace instead of a sense of confusion, or
Right.
fear. Even though, any change is hard, but there's something about wisdom and peace. Like, I don't know if the peace comes first or the wisdom, but I feel like they're connected somehow.
Right. So sometimes that's how God communicates with peace.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the wisdom of getting the answer from God, and then there's wisdom from understanding the difference. And so God gives you peace sometimes in a situation when you're trying to discern it, and that's from God. Let's see. Any other thoughts?
I was just thinking that wisdom can apply when you're trying to discern between maybe groups or making friends or something like that that can help you propel you towards God or propel you away from God. You can kind of discern and make that decision to figure out which crowd you want to kind of associate yourself with, or even scenarios where you feel like you want to influence an organization or something, or you want to influence something along those lines, but you're trying to figure out maybe this is an organization that I have more of an ability to influence and to maybe bring some people closer.
Yeah.
And then this is an organization that I might not have as much of an opportunity. So maybe with wisdom concerning that, because you can't do everything.
Right.
You can only do what your bounds are.
Yeah.
To do.
Yeah, that's wisdom, making the distinction between what I can do and what I can't do, what I can impact, and also deciding, whether to try to have a small impact or a big impact, or what areas to impact. Yeah, and definitely which groups, which people to associate with, or wisdom to know the consequences of associating with the wrong people. Yeah. Okay. You have Proverbs 4:8.
I do. Cherish her and she will exalt you. Embrace her.
I'm sorry.
4:8.
7 through 10.
Proverbs 7 through 10.
Proverbs 4, 7 through 10.
Okay. All right. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, though it costs all you have. Get understanding. Cherish her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you.
All right. So wisdom. So we should pursue wisdom. So get wisdom, and acquiring, get understanding. So wisdom will give you long life. So wisdom is something to be sought after. So in addition to the fact that getting the wisdom brings you the favor of God, so it's kind of a double whammy. So you're wise, now you can make the right decisions, but now in addition to it, you get favor from God to get additional things. There's a Jewish proverb that says, "Who is wise? One who can learn from anyone." So a wise person doesn't necessarily only learn from people who are smarter than them. They can learn from anyone.
Anyone. You never stop learning.
Right.
Yes.
Let's see. You have Luke 2:52.
Yeah. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men.
So Jesus grew with wisdom, he grew with age, and he grew with favor in God and men. So we see the connection there with wisdom and favor, but we see it in Jesus. So Jesus grew in wisdom. So we can increase our wisdom and we can increase our favor.
What does it mean that he grew in stature? What is that?
Age.
Age.
So it's just kind of as he grew older in size, he grew bigger. And so we see there's a link between wisdom and favor, and that we can increase both of them. So the question is, well, how do we get wisdom? How do we get wisdom? So number one,
Through God's word.
yes, through God's word. So studying the Bible, especially the book of Proverbs. That's number one. Number two, praying for it. You can pray for wisdom. And number three is fearing God or respecting God. Let's see. So you have James 1, 5 through 8. Ask for wisdom.
It says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do.
All right, so if you want wisdom, ask for it. So pray to God for it. And it's saying don't doubt, double-minded. So you never hear that when you ask don't doubt. You never hear it in the context that it's used in, asking for wisdom. But that's what it's actually referring to. So we should pray for wisdom if we want wisdom. We should ask God for it. Pray for it. So that should be in our prayers. To ask God for wisdom. Ask God for the ability to make decisions, the ability to discern differences. And next is the fear of the Lord, which was we saw in the last lesson was one of the things that brings you favor. Let's see, Austin, you have Psalms 111 and 10.
Okay, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever.
Okay, so we see in there we have wisdom, we have understanding for those who do his commandments. So there we have righteousness again, and we have praise in there as well. So praising God as a factor. But so the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So we looked at fearing God, respecting God last time as something that brings favor. If you're considering God in your decisions, then you'll make wise choices. So fearing God or revering God is kind of like if you walk into, say, the church and you're going to head towards the bathroom and the pastor says, oh, don't use that bathroom, use the other one. Then you probably just, okay, you immediately go to the other one. But if it was like, say, a little kid, a 3-year-old was like, oh, you shouldn't use that bathroom, you may go, I'll go ahead and I'll probably just check, see if I can use it. It's just a little kid.
Right.
So it's like how much do you revere or respect what God says? Do you take it for, oh, this is, or do you go, yeah, I'll consider that, but let me check for myself. It's like, yeah, he said that, but let me check for myself. So that's fearing the Lord. It's like how much weight do you put on God's word or what God says? Is it absolute? Is it, okay, he said it, so it must be true, or is it, yeah, I'll consider that. That sounds like, yeah, that sounds good, but let me consider my other options. That's not it. It worked better. It worked differently for my cousin. So yeah, my cousin didn't have to do all that.
Right.
And she got married. So maybe I won't need to do that.
So basically, showing wisdom to the Lord is fearing Him and respecting His commandments and following His commandments.
Yeah, so respecting His commandments is kind of show part of the proof that you fear God, and then when you fear Him, you get favor and you get wisdom. So when you fear Him, you get wisdom, and when you get wisdom, you get favor. But also, when you're fearing God, brings you favor from God. So it's.
I can see that because before I make decisions, I sort of think, what would God do, right? And is this something that's going to be godly, you know? And that's to me the fear of God. Like, I don't want to make a decision where I feel like, you know, I didn't follow God's word.
Right.
You know, like I try to, you know, make this decision on my own without really trying to follow what I should know.
Right.
And I think that just comes from the fear of God. Just knowing, let me think about that first before I make this decision.
Yeah, and also fearing what is God gonna think about this decision?
Right.
That is fearing God. It's like, well, what is God gonna think? If you did that with all your decisions, then you know your sins would definitely get reduced. If everything you did, you say, well, what's God gonna think about this?
Right.
And you that was the strongest factor in your decision, then that would change a lot.
But then we also have to know all His commandments too. So knowledge is the first application. You have to have knowledge before you have wisdom.
Yes. So knowledge, yeah. So that was the fool. So a fool has the knowledge but doesn't apply it. But a wise person has the knowledge and applies it. So yeah, knowing what to do, the knowledge, getting the knowledge, and get understanding. So that's important. Let's see. And then, we have studying the Word. So book of Proverbs is the book of wisdom. So studying the Bible gives you wisdom. Proverbs is a wisdom book. Ecclesiastes is too. It has to be understood and interpreted correctly. But, so that's wisdom. Any other thoughts on wisdom?
I know in the Old Testament, like in Leviticus, there was like a lot of instructions that God had in Leviticus. And I know like in the New Testament, there's different instructions. There's instructions that are similar, but they're since Jesus came and died on the cross and saved our sins, and he wiped all our sins away when we believe in Him. So basically, with that application, I think we still have to be aware of those commandments, but there's just certain commandments that in the Old Testament where they had to follow and they had to do, and if they sin, they had to make sacrifices.
Right.
So that the application of how people lived in the Old Testament and how they apply wisdom could be a bit different than how people apply wisdom now currently.
Yeah, they had I think 356 different laws that they had in Leviticus. From when you grow your crops, you have to leave the edges for the poor, and if you can't touch a woman if that's on her cycle or be near her, and what things that made you unclean and things. So there are a lot of laws that we don't necessarily have to follow, but then there's some that we do. They had the 10 Commandments as well, which was separate. And Jesus summed it up saying, fear God and love your neighbor as yourself, and kind of the things that apply to that. So there were some things that Jesus specifically said but don't necessarily apply anymore, like the Sabbath, or the New Testament said, unclean foods aren't necessarily a sin anymore.
Fatty foods. There was a verse that mentioned about fatty foods.
Fatty foods?
Like you can't eat fatty foods. On Leviticus.
Yes, Leviticus says a lot of what you can eat in that.
Well, I know it says a lot of things
what women should wear.
Like shellfish and pork. It says don't eat.
Yeah.
So things like that, the New Testament clearly says we don't have to follow. It's not a sin anymore. So those were health laws, though. So it's still
Those are
probably
laws, so
healthy. I mean, that was still probably healthy advice. But
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily a sin anymore.
It's good to like be aware of the law.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely. Okay.
it's good to see how blessed we are. We don't live under the law, but it's good to know,
The law.
to appreciate, I guess, what we have, you know.
Yeah.
Because we don't live under the law, thank God, to Jesus, right?
Right.
But in following those commandments to love God in your heart, in your mind, and above everything, and to love your neighbor as yourself, that summarizes everything, right?
Right.
If you love your neighbor, you're not going to cause them harm, you're not going to kill them, you're not going to rob them.
Right. You're not gonna.
We don't wish them any bad, right?
Right.
But yeah, they had to follow a lot of laws of how to kill the animals, how to
Right.
do.
You couldn't touch an animal.
Yeah.
If you touched blood, you had to stay out from the community for 7 days or something.
But how wonderful is God in all those things, and how He tell men when they go and do their necessities, waste themselves, their bodies, right? To bury that, because He was among them, that He taught us how to do that, to bury
how to bury when they
yes,
die.
mm-hmm. It's amazing. You read all that and all the things that we do because are there. We don't know that we do them, but they are there. Right. A lot of the things.
Well, a lot of the things that we know now, but they didn't know then. So we know now that it's unhealthy or things. They didn't have refrigeration.
To
they
clean
didn't
themselves.
have a lot of the
come
things we
in
have.
the presence of God.
It was like causing death back then.
Yes.
And so that was part of the reason for the law we studied earlier, is that the non-Jews would see how wise these laws were, and so they would want to follow the God of the Jews. Like eventually they realized, he tells them don't grow every 7 years, don't grow your crops, and then now the farmers know that you have to let that 1 year you have to let the land rest, but they didn't know that then. But then they're seeing the results. They're they skip a whole year, but they're getting more results than the other people. And so they would say, oh, hey, their God is really wise, so let's follow him, was the plan. And so, yeah. Okay. All right, so we have wisdom. And now the second one is doing good deeds for others. Brings favor. So doing good for others brings favor. So it's kind of like sowing and reaping, in a sense. So you have Galatians 6:7.
It says, do not be deceived, God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whoever sows to please the flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life.
Okay. So it says, you reap what you sow. So if we look at that in doing good from others, it's you reap what you sow. So it's not saying you're going to reap from whom you sow. So it's not saying you do something good for somebody, then that person needs to do something good for you. Or it's not saying you're going to reap where you sow. So if you sow into this ministry, then you're not going to necessarily get back from that ministry, or you're not going to, or if you sow into this person, you're not going to necessarily reap back from that person.
But you're going to reap good.
You're going to reap good. Yeah, you're going to reap what you sow. So the recipient doesn't need to necessarily appreciate it. That's not. It's not saying that.
Right.
It's not saying that the
person.
person. Yeah, it's not saying the person. When you do good, the person is going to appreciate it. So it's not saying you're going to necessarily sow it even from that same person, but God appreciates it.
He sees.
Even the
He
world
knows.
says that as a saying that we reap what we sow, right?
Yeah.
Even when we read bad, we get bad, right?
Right. Right.
Look both ways.
Yeah, and we saw that in the last lesson that, if you want bad to happen for others, then bad things will happen to you. Yeah.
I like what it says in verse 8 where it says, "But he that soweth in the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting."
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So that's pretty powerful right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're sowing in your spirit, if you're going out and really trying to let your spirit guide you to follow God's commandments, and also just to guide you to make the right decisions with wisdom, then you're sowing into an everlasting life.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I imagine that the opposite of that would be like what you're feeling in your flesh, right? Like my flesh doesn't want to help this person out, but my spirit's saying she needs a helping hand, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's to follow my spirit rather than what my flesh wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Follow the leading of the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I see it a little differently. I see it more like doing a good deed, but doing it for your own self-satisfaction. You know, to kind of honor yourself. You know, make yourself feel
Feel
powerful.
good about yourself.
Yeah, other than just doing a good deed for the kindness of doing for someone else without expecting anything in return, right? Whether they're satisfied with it or not, it's just a deed that you've done, you know. But I when I see it when it's talking about the soul that pleases your flesh, to me it's something that's that self-satisfaction. You know, like I've done it because I look like a great person and I'm a good person.
Well,
You feel good, right? You feel good inside.
You do, but it's more of like an egotistic kind of thing is what I'm saying. Like you
Well,
feel more powerful, like, you know, you got the upper hand on something, so.
when you feel good about doing a good deed, you do it in the honor of God.
Right.
That's a very nice feeling. But if we do it, because I want
The
be
recognition.
known
Yeah.
or people to know that I did that, then that's, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's why it says.
We have to be careful with that good feeling
Yeah.
because it is, you feel good when you do good deeds in the name, you know, in God's honor for His glory. It feels good. But then it says nobody has to know, right?
Right.
Don't let the left hand know what the right does.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, So I mean, I don't think it's wrong to feel good about doing it. I think it's, but yeah, like a lot of they talk about how wealthy people, part of the reason they donate is because it gets rid of, well, yeah, that, but also it gets rid of, because there's a guilt associated with wealth, and that relieves the guilt.
Oh, is
Yeah,
that
they
right?
feel good.
When they donate, yeah,
They feel good.
it relieves the guilt of feeling of the wealth when they give to the poor. So it's not without self-benefit as well. Let's see. Ephesians 6:7-8 says, with goodwill render service as to the Lord, and not to men, knowing that whatever good things each one does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether slave or free. So that can be applied to your job, or, you know, we're saying with goodwill is the word, it's Greek word eunoia. Eunoia. So with goodwill render service. So whatever service you give, do it with eunoia. So eunoia is kindness, and it's, as a figure of speech, is used as talk about the conjugal duty, like between a husband and wife. It's benevolence, it's goodwill. And so we want to do it with kindness. Whatever service we render, we want to do it with kindness. So we see that this is wanting to do good for others, and it's wanting to satisfy the needs of others. And then specific examples, there are quite a few about giving to the poor. So Proverbs 28, 27. Is that
That's who.
that's you?
Those who give to the poor will lack nothing, but those who close their eyes to them receive many curses.
So that's pretty clear.
Curses.
That's awesome.
Curses.
Curses.
So if you give to the poor, it says you will never be poor. If you give to the poor, you will never be poor. If you ignore the poor, you will be cursed.
Mm.
So cursed means, you will work for something and not get it.
Mm.
So you will. Curse is the opposite of favor.
Mm. Mm.
No, giving to the poor can mean financially, but it can also mean with our service or with our talents or time.
Yes, or even your attention, just talking to someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it doesn't have to be money. It could be, giving time, hanging out with them, talking to them, giving advice even to the poor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be money. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I was watching this video of there was this guy that was poor. It was like just out on the streets. He needed like direction and stuff like that. And then there was another guy that kind of somebody saw something positive about him, and I guess he like maybe served him lunch one day, and then he tried to like get his resume together, get him going out to some interviews and stuff, and then he was able to get him a job, and then he was able to find a way to move into an apartment eventually. So that's just like an application of like serving the poor. I mean, he did it financially to an extent, of course, but he did it so he can get that guy on his feet. So I mean,
Right.
it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and so so God gives promises associated with giving to the poor. So you have Proverbs 19:17.
He who is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward him for what he has done.
Okay, so it's saying if you give to the poor, you lend to the Lord. So it's saying if you give to the poor, now God owes you.
Right? You're lending to the Lord, right?
You're loaning to the Lord.
And the Lord will reward you for what you've done.
Right. So you give to the poor, now God is in debt with you. So it's not saying that the poor person is going to reward you, but it's saying God now rewards you.
As long as you don't do it with that intention of having that in return.
Well, it doesn't even say that though.
Right.
That's
what I was told somewhere down the road. I don't know.
Oh, really? I don't. Yeah. I mean, I guess
heard it when it comes to tithing.
I know. Yeah, with tithing, it's definitely clear that the intention matters. But I'm not sure here. I mean, I guess God does see your heart, but But there are some things that the action itself. I mean, there's some negative actions that reap. There's sowing and reaping is not tied to motive in some situations.
But they should all be for the right reasons.
It should be
for good. For the
yeah,
good.
it should be
Always for the good.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, you should be wanting to give to the poor. You should have a heart for the poor. You should, because seeking good is definitely brings favor. So I guess there's could be a difference between sowing and reaping in favor in a sense, because you get something back. That's not necessarily favor. Favor is kind of a state you're in. Solomon was favored, so it's like his actions he did. Moses was favored. He did something bad or whatever, but he still has access to God. Because he's just favored in general. But whereas sowing and reaping, maybe this one action gives you one reward, but you can get a blessing even if you're not favored. So the motive would probably play into being favored. But so God takes the debt on for the poor. So like we said, tithing isn't the same as giving to the poor. So tithing is giving to God.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not giving to the poor. It's given to God, it's given to a church. And there are different commands and promises around tithing. And if we look at, the example when the rich man said, what do I need to do to go to heaven? And Jesus said, well, you have to sell all your possessions and give it to the poor. He's like,
Say what?
What's my other option?
Well, I think that's why God favored Solomon so much, because he could have asked for more money.
Right. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask to kill his enemies. He didn't ask to, yeah. So Jesus told him to give it to the poor. So Jesus didn't tell him to go give it to the temple. He told him to give it to the poor. And, okay.
But I don't know. I think of it this way. I'm sorry. I'm about to kind of.
Oh, go ahead.
Solomon didn't have to ask for money, right? And you started today saying, who's your source, right? Who do you ask for if you need that raise?
Mm-hmm.
And in this economy now, the area that we live in now, it's so hard to not ask God for a raise or, ask your job for a raise or to pray for that. Because there are so many people right now who financially can't afford to live here, and they are working.
Right.
But the cost of living has changed in the past 5 years drastically, and it's a choice now. What's the wisest choice, right? Do I move out to Sacramento? Do I move out to Texas? Because I can't afford to stay somewhere that I consider home. And here's that question on, do you ask God for,
Yes.
more money?
Right.
You do. I did.
And we're not.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not saying don't.
No. I'm just saying, like in Solomon's case, right? He was in a position where he didn't have to ask for more money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because he's already wealthy. So
It's
the goodness out of his
son.
heart, he
Yeah.
said, I just want wisdom and kindness, because he's at a state where financially, that's not really a need for him. But in other,
but I think though that from our perspective, but from probably 95% of the world, you're super wealthy.
oh, I understand. Totally.
And
Totally.
it's like most of us are considered well, not 95, but by most of the world, most of us are wealthy. But we still would maybe ask for some more money. I mean, I'm sure Solomon wanted more stuff.
That was his opportunity.
The mankind always want wealth, right? Wants money, but yeah, I think it was so nice that he was so smart that he didn't ask for that.
Yeah.
He could have asked for more kingdoms or more, because he already has a lot, but he didn't. He wanted wisdom to guide these people, that God has put on his hands. And I've been there where I had to work 2 jobs to just pay my rent. And I always pray and ask God. I was not a Christian, but I believe in God. And I always said, I want to make what I make with these 2 jobs, because I don't want to work 2 jobs. Mm-hmm. And I do, and more. Mm-hmm. And God has blessed me tremendously, because he knows your heart, he knows your needs. Mm-hmm. You're not asking because you want to drive a Mercedes, or it never crossed my mind go to another state. I just asked, I wanted to make enough that I can pay my rent. Mm. And he has given me more.
Yeah.
I've been there, and it took me years to get to where I am now, but it was a matter of I had to in order to survive. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't want to live a life of greed. It's just what's the demand right now. It's a necessity to ask for more, and you can't really go to a job and say, I need more money because the cost of living is too high. That's just not realistically going to happen. So your only option is to call on God to help you through it.
Yeah.
Somehow he will provide.
And
He will soften the hearts of your bosses, and He does provide.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we're looking at favor, because a minute of favor can do what a year's worth of work couldn't get you.
Yep.
So we'll look at, next week, Joseph got 5 minutes with the king, and then he went from a prisoner to being second in command of the country because of the favor. So it's like favor, would it be better to be skilled and experienced in an interview, or would it be better to have favor from the person who's going to hire you? So that's kind of why we're looking at favor, is favor puts you on a different playing field. It's there's sowing and reaping, and then there's favor.
I know one thing about favor, that is like, you don't have to be qualified. You don't have to be qualified necessarily to have favor from like a particular like job or a particular instance or situation. You just have to be qualified in the understanding of, I guess, the commandments, being righteous, and then just respecting God and honoring God and fearing God. From that standpoint, yes, but from the standpoint of like whatever application you're trying to have favor of, you don't have to be qualified from that standpoint.
Right.
Completely.
Yeah. And there's different. So we're looking at 10 different things to bring you favor, and it's not necessarily that you have to do or have all 10. It's like some of them are specific commands. If you do this, I will do that. And it's not necessarily tied to having all of the others. And so, it's like if I jump off a building, I'm going to drop, because that's gravity. Whether or not I tied it or not, that's just what's going to happen. That's just how it works. That's how.
But then that goes to wisdom.
Wisdom.
That goes right back to wisdom. If you have wisdom and you know how to discern in terms of making your decisions, God would not lead you to jump off a building.
Oh. Yes.
What's that? I've also
No jumping off buildings.
What's that? I also heard that that Satan also rewards sinners.
Satan rewards sinners?
Satan or God?
He said Satan.
Oh.
Yeah, that could be true in certain scenarios.
These
I mean, I also...
Actually, people that are going on the wrong path in life, and they have all these material things. They're wealthy, and it's like... Oh,
So there's... Satan rewards sinners. God could also reward sinners, though. I mean, that's kind of... There's some things that... Because a sinner can be wise in other areas. A sinner
have favor too?
A sinner could want good things for other people. That's kind of the tricky part. But then you also there's temptation. So it doesn't have to be a sinner, it could be a good person, where Satan could draw you, say, hey, there's some money over here, and tempt you with the money, and you may go after the money instead of God. So, I mean, you can get worldly success outside of God. Yeah, I mean, and you can get offered worldly success to pull you away from God. I mean, so sometimes, somebody may have a choice. I could either go into ministry and that person's going to eventually have the biggest church ever, but then Satan may say, okay, I see that's about to happen, so hey, let me offer you this job for $200,000 a year, where you have to work 7 days a week. And then if he chooses that option, he'll never go the path that God wanted him to choose. So Satan will use worldly success to pull you away from the things of God. Or he'll use the things you want. That's what temptation is what your heart is lusting after. That's what Satan may offer to tempt you with. You see that as the stuff you're lusting after. You see that success. It's like so success in our minds is if I have this, this, and this, and say, okay, you like this, this, and this, and you're putting this, this, and this above God, well, I'll give you that, so you won't go turn
Okay,
on
I
God.
see. Yeah.
Because in your heart, you're going, oh man, I really want A, B, and C. So Satan go, okay, I'll give you A, B, and C if it's going to take you away from God. They're like, that was easy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, so.
Isn't in today's world, isn't like idols basically anything that takes you away from God?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the way we use the terminology we use in the church. Yeah, the idol is anything that takes you away from God. Yeah. Okay, so now let's look at. Let's look at haters. So we saw the last lesson that God rewards those who seek good for others. So now we're seeing that God favors those who put that into action, so those who do good deeds. God rewards those who want good things to happen to others. So many times people are upset when you see good things happening to others, especially when you view them as bad people or sinners or things.
Right.
So you get upset. Hey, why do they get good things? Or if a person you think doesn't deserve it. So the kind of the irony or the tension with it is that not wanting good things for others is part of what keeps you from getting good things. So seeking good means you want good things to happen to other people. So we looked at Ephesians 6, 7, and 8, and it tells us that when you want good things to happen to others, you receive favor. So we see, like we talked about earlier, that the concept of favor, in a sense, mirrors the two commands of Jesus. Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. So we looked at fearing God. So reverencing God, respecting God, obeying the commandments brings you favor. So that's the first part of it. So loving God with all your heart, mind, and soul brings you favor. But also loving your neighbor as yourself brings you favor. So when you want good things to happen to others, it brings you favor. So desiring good for your neighbor brings you favor. So you're supposed to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So a lot of times we talk about, or we hear, oh, well, that means you have to love yourself first, and that means but it's saying love your neighbor as you not love yourself. It's meaning the same. It doesn't mean the same amount you love yourself. It means the same way you love yourself. So no matter how much someone quote unquote hates themselves or whatever, everyone wants something good to happen to them. Everyone wants something. So it isn't you have to love yourself first. Everyone loves himself in some sense that you want something good for yourself. So loving your neighbor as yourself is wanting whatever it is good you want for yourself, wanting that for your neighbor. So that's why when Jesus told the rich man he had to give all his possessions to the poor to get to heaven, because he wanted riches. His heart was for riches. His goal was riches. So if he wanted riches, his goal was for the poor person to have riches.
I see.
Then he would get to heaven.
Oh, okay. That's different.
So if you want health, then that means loving your neighbor as yourself means you want health for your neighbor.
Your neighbor.
If you want to get married, then loving your neighbor as yourself means you want your neighbor to get married. It means you're happy when your neighbor gets married. If you want riches, then loving your neighbor as yourself means you want your neighbor to be rich.
So what you're saying basically is, like say for health, right? You're thinking about, say you want yourself to be healthy, you want to live with good health, but you want your neighbors to live with good health too. But you're not necessarily thinking about your neighbors living with good health as much as you're thinking about yourself living with good health in terms of like the time frame, the time that you do. But you do reflect on your neighbors. You're like, I want them to live with good health, so I'm gonna maybe pray for them that they live with good
pray
health.
for their health, and you're happy when you like if your neighbor gets cured of cancer, or something, you're happy about it, even though you may have cancer yourself. You're happy about it. So it doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, you may still think about, your health more than your neighbor's health.
Yeah.
But at least you should be wanting your neighbor to be healthy. Yeah.
So at the core, it's your desire.
It's your desire.
Your heart desire.
So your heart desire should be for your neighbor.
Right.
So if your desire for yourself is designer purses or fancy cars, then your desire should be that your neighbor has designer purses and fancy cars. If your neighbor gets a designer purse and you don't, you should be happy because you want for your neighbor what you want for yourself. If you're unhappy that your neighbor got something, then that means you're not seeking good for that person. So if they get, what you want and you can't afford it or you can't, live there, it's like, are you happy about it or are you not? So it's not, just, someone in your family or someone's close to you. It's your neighbor. Do you want good for your neighbor? And so we see that wanting good for your neighbor brings you favor. And so not wanting good from your neighbor blocks your favor. So the irony is, if you're mad that someone got something, that's blocking you from getting it yourself. That's the.
That was really challenging, though. I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, especially for work. I remember someone. We started the job at the same time, and I saw him doing an amazing job. But I was second behind him. But he won a lot of awards and. I want the promotion. He wants the promotion, and at the time they had to choose only one. It wasn't me.
That's tough.
And it took so much for me to, without being jealous, to say, well, I am happy for him, and I was. He deserved it.
Right.
But to sit there to see that you've taken the loss and they've got the gain, it's like, how did you walk with this? I really do want you to do great.
Or knowing what all you have done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
made,
all you have done.
Like 1% less effort. And you're like, I didn't get it. And I had to really, really pray and meditate on that because it's not him. He didn't do any wrong to me, and he didn't make the decision. He worked just as hard, and he deserved it. And I don't know. My opportunity, and I'm in that situation now to say something that's recent, but I can see God working this week. My opportunities are slowly coming to me, and it's just word of mouth. Nothing is definite, but I'm praying. But I might be in a position higher than the position that I thought I wasn't going to get, and I think that's because I had to really honestly be truthful with myself to say that I am happy for him and I do want good for him. And, he has a family and, things that he needs in life that I want him to be successful with as well. That's a challenge.
Yes, it's hard.
Just this week, I'm like, look at God. What do you mean I might have another opportunity just for something that...
See, you were not expecting that. You think your opportunity now is gone, right? And you just have to be happy. And, one of the things, the fear of God is very important because of the fear of God and because you have to have a good heart for these other people. And like you said, just pray about it and ask for perseverance. Because you'll get there. And even better. He'll give you even better. Yeah, I've been there too. Where it takes years. I tell anybody at work sometimes when I see them working hard and then it seems like other people they're growing easy. I say, you just keep on working. You work hard. Because this boss may not see it, but another one will come and they know. Bosses come and go, management come and go, but the skills that we have, you don't find them out there easily. So my thing for people, I see them, I say, just keep working, work hard. Don't look to the right or to the left. Somebody will see that, and you'll be rewarded, because God is good.
And God sees it, And it may not be, you may not sow it in the same place you reaped it.
Right.
So it may come somewhere else. But yeah, it is hard. I mean, Yeah, it's hard seeing things that you, especially when you think you deserved it. It's one thing when it's just not tied to you at all. Somebody got something good and you just wish you had it, but it's another one that's like you felt like you deserved it just as much. Yeah. It's,
but you know, it's a humbling experience.
It is.
You
Yeah.
know, you just gotta sit back and humble. I just, you know, another year, and it took some time, and at the end of the day, I just count my blessings. You know, like what more do I'm fine. I have what I need, and I am blessed and highly favored by God.
I'm glad what I heard you said that we're rich, you know, where we live and all that. Even though it doesn't look like, but yes, we are. Yeah.
Oh, go to a third world country.
Yes.
You'll come back very humble
Mm-hmm.
and see how rich you are.
so let's see. All right.
So it's coming soon, huh?
The promotion.
Yeah.
I don't want to set myself up for any expectations. I just told myself, I'm just gonna follow God.
We just gotta pray about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't want to set myself up for disappointment with it. Too high of an expectation. It's not definite. It's not something that was written in stone, but just to get the message this week of the recognition, and to say, you potentially could be there. It's still rewarding to me just for even to be recognized that I have the potential, and that just gives me more confidence to say, all right, just hang in there.
Yeah.
And you never know what could happen.
Yeah.
And it did lower my confidence a whole lot. It made me feel like I was undeserving, and that I hadn't done enough. And I had. That's just the way the decision was made, and I don't know for what reason, but he deserved it. He didn't deserve it. From their eyes, he earned it more, and I agree. And I just maintained, and I did try to fight. I'm not gonna lie. I tried to maybe I should go to another job where I feel I get more recognition and things like that. And those jobs didn't come to me. I would apply, and then
Maria can relate.
I would
so
be
familiar.
like, why didn't I? And like I said, then I had to humble myself because it's my ego, right? Just telling me that I should be here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this person should not be above me, and things like that. But I continued being kind to him, and I never
You're at work
took
and
my
you're
frustration out on him because it wasn't about him. It's just all me, and I've still been there for a year. Not the happiest, but I get up and I go to work and I show up and I do what I have to do. It's just those other thoughts that you have, when you're going to bed, like, why aren't I where I want to be? And I just feel like, God knows, right? And I don't know. And we try to take control of the situation is where we become, we disappoint ourselves, I think. We get frustrated, that internal, almost the sins come out, the jealousy and all of that. You feel that out when you have a passion for something that you really want. And you forget that God is walking you through. So I'm so happy that I know God and I know the Word of God, and that always puts me back in check when I'm falling, when I'm falling off the wagon, and just gotta pick myself up.
So that's what brings you closer to Him,
I feel it.
Because you're at war with the flesh, or your feelings, your emotions, and then you want to please God.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm still just being a humble servant and just watching where this path is. I'm continue doing it.
It will be on His timing.
Yeah. I trust that.
Yeah.
I trust that. God has a plan. I just need to stay humble.
Yeah. Be humble. Yeah, and grow through it.
I seen this thing on Facebook today. It's actually kind of inspiring. It said, the man asked God, why are you taking me through rough waters? And God responded, because your enemies can't swim. It's like, wow, that's pretty deep when you think about it. Because I've gone through some rough waters thinking, why am I going through this? But it's for a reason.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so in conclusion, So favor isn't given because you need it. So it's not necessarily given to those who are in need. It's obtained by our actions and our deeds. We don't all get an equal amount of favor. It's a response to our choices, our actions, our words. Favor can be obtained. Favor can be increased. Jesus increased in favor. So we've examined Bible verses to tell us the favor of God as a result of righteousness, seeking good for others, knowing God's ways, being humble, fearing, revering God, acting with love and kindness, being married, obtaining wisdom, and doing good deeds, including giving to the poor. And then next week we'll look at being around those with favor. So why should we want favors? One day of favor can bring us a year's worth of work and preparation. Favor makes life easier. You can use favor to serve and honor God. Favor is a shortcut to the success you want. You get favor from God, you get God's attention. You get favor as a response to taking God's advice, even if you didn't know it was God's advice. So who had favor? Noah had favor. Abraham had favor. Joseph had favor. Moses had favor. David had favor. And Jesus grew in favor with God and men. So the believer who has God's favor is unstoppable. So if you have favor, your education doesn't matter. If you have favor, your skill doesn't matter. If you have favor, your age, height, how attractive you are doesn't matter. All that matters is God's hand is upon your life and God's face is shining upon you. Man, let's walk in the way, let's seek the truth, and live the life.
Good stuff.
The jealousy. Yeah, it was a story of these orphans that this woman adopted them, and they grew up in orphanage all their life, in bad situation, and they had 20 kids and not enough food and everything, and so it was a rich family, so they brought them home. They got them to the table. Actually, I guess you probably heard the story, but they brought them to and then so the first night, the two kids came to the table and they said, "Oh, dinner served." So the kids were grabbing. They went and grabbed the rolls. They started stuffing them in their pocket. They started grabbing everything and put it in. And then the parents were like, "What's good? What are they doing?" And the other kids were like looking. So then eventually they, then the other people ate. Then the next night the same thing. They're grabbing all the food they can and stuff because they're used to, there not being enough. If you don't grab it now, then and so they had the mentality that, if someone else gets it, then there's not anything left for me. And so, and it's kind of, in some sense, a reflection of how we see God or our Father, which can be a reflection of how we saw our Father, but it's a scarcity mentality, that if someone else gets something good, then that means it's not enough for me. My God doesn't have enough good things to go around.
It's the exact opposite. Right? I mean, there's more than enough for you, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and so.
Because we serve a king that owns cattle on 1,000 hills.
Yeah. And so, so I don't know necessarily how to change that mindset, but maybe in the future we'll look into that.